Hello everybody, this is Prepper003 here, and today I want to talk to you guys about another group threat for SHTF/WROL scenario. And this one is going to be one that was actually requested for me to do by a subscriber, and I'm actually kind of interested on the topic because it's something that I never thought about, and that, as you can see from the title, is going to be biker gangs. So, right now I'm going to start off with pretty much the biggest point that there is, and that's going to be that they are highly mobile. And what do I mean by highly mobile? Well, being on bikes, they are very easily able to move in and out of heavily congested traffic areas. They have the capability of moving off onto very thin side roads depending on the bikes that they have, because biker gangs do also use dirt bikes and off-roading ATVs as well. So that just adds into the capability of them to being able to move even throughout the countryside. And a lot of what that is that, but being highly mobile is that a lot of biker gangs actually do drive over the road. They go in and out of states, and that's just on their free time. So what that does give them the capability of is that they know the roads, they know how to drive in and out of heavy traffic, even in rush hour. They know how to deal with some of the more erroneous areas as well, especially for having to find opposite routes, having to move about very damaged roads, especially in disaster situations. You've seen biker gangs move throughout those very easily, especially in other countries, especially like down in the Middle East, down in South Africa, and down in the Central Americas as well, and South America. So they're able to very easily move about. A lot of traffickers use dirt bikes and bikes. So that's what gives them their mobile capability, and being able to quickly and capability of being able to move throughout those roads and being able to find opposite paths with their predetermined knowledge of the roads, especially some of them that are strictly stick to the states and know a lot of the side roads, a lot of the roads that aren't heavily traveled, is something that gives them a definite edge against you in an SHTF scenario. The next thing is going to be their armaments and their numbers. First off, the size of a lot of these groups is very, very big. And I mean, some of these gangs can span to multiple states, especially like, for example, as we've seen down in the south, like biker gangs in Texas. They can be very large, they can be very encompassing, and they might not always have the most savory of people. And that's just for one example. And what I mean by arms, well, a lot of biker gangs do kind of move into some of the more underground things of society. They do deal in some of the narcotics industries, some of the drugs, and even into the firearms trades as well, the illegal ones, of course. Some of them are legal in the firearms that they own completely and everything, but some of them also are not. And they also are not afraid to use their firearms for their nefarious purposes, which is another thing that gives them an edge in their capability. They've already experienced the kind of nitty-gritty type of thing in their field of view and in their field of knowledge, to where they won't be hesitant to use that force against you as a prepper. Now, pretty much the armaments that they use are going to be very concealable. They're pretty much going to stick to small arms, knives, blunt objects. Sometimes they will experience into some more of the heavier stuff like incendiary devices and improvised explosives. But for the most part, they'll deal with stuff that's concealable. Sawed-off shotguns, PDWs, things along those type of lines, like MAC-10s, pistols, sawed-off shotguns, just some of those things. They might have some SBR capabilities, things like these right here, but they'll still have stuff that's going to be compact enough to where they can conceal it on their person while on a bike. So the one thing that you might not have to worry completely about is them having a lot of long-range capability. Now, sure, yes, they might be able to gain that capability and they might have people with that knowledge, but readily, at the moment, a lot of them might not have that. And right now, that's just something to take into account, but don't bet on it. So for what I would say is just to kind of give them the same capability as a prepper would and the capability of small arms fire. The next thing is going to be kind of their activity. As I mentioned before, they're heavily involved in drugs, narcotics, and firearms. So what that can transition to is them having a very mass capability of local economics trade and have a hold on a trade routes, especially with their capability of holding down the roads. So that's something to just take into account of, especially if you're thinking about bartering. they can be very, very persuasive, if you will, in quotes there, in what they want to do and what they're capable of doing as a force threat. The next thing is going to be is their mechanical capability. And what I mean by their mechanical capability is that they're capable of producing a lot of things. They're capable of working on their bikes, working on vehicles, and fabricating firearms and ammunition as well, as we've seen over in Europe, over in Australia, where these biker gangs are producing fully automatic capable firearms in these heavily gun-controlled countries, to the point where it's a very heavily induced thing on the local firearms regulations and a lot of the local police and law enforcement in those areas. So right now, it's just something I want people to kind of think about, is that even if they do not own the firearms that they necessarily will need, that doesn't stop them from really making them to what they need as well. So just another thing to think about in their capabilities is that they have the capability of manufacturing and producing what they might need in an SHTF scenario. And a lot of them, and this is going to be in the last thing, is their vast resource capability, is that they have the ability with a multitude and a vast majority of members. They'll have members that were in the military, they'll have members that were medical personnel at one point or another, or if they are still, they'll have people that know how to produce and how to power their garages, their factories, to producing these weapons and these vehicles and things to help within their trade route and in their capabilities as a group and as a threat. So right now, that's pretty much it. And right now, as I mentioned, they're highly mobile, so they're going to stick to roads. So maybe if you're not too heavily in the urban areas, or if you're not too heavily to a lot of the interstates or heavily traveled roads, you might not have to deal with them as much. But I still would kind of prepare for them as being something that can roll through your area and can be a threat. So I really want to hear how you guys think about that. If you think biker gangs are necessarily a large threat to contend with as a prepper in an SHTF scenario, if it's something that's more of a group threat in a terms of a city or a trading outpost, if you will, or if it's something that as a individual prepper you might not really need to prep for as much. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the feedback on this, because it was something that kind of interested me as well. I never really thought about it that much until the person asked me to do a group threat video on it. So I appreciate it. And remember, those that prepare for today survive tomorrow.